Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, everyone. This is Lori Smith on Blog Talk Radio. Good evening. It is 10 o'clock p.m. here in Calgary, Alberta on Wednesday night, August the 31st. This is Child Abuse Prevention and Human Rights Abuse Prevention is Up to Us. It's a 30-minute live internet streaming radio broadcast from blogtalkradio.com. And the chat room's open. I did pop the link into there. I want to talk about tonight. Just looking at child abuse prevention stuff, mainly looking at last Monday night we were talking about dysfunctional parenting styles, maybe people who grew up abused and grew up in dysfunctional homes and then went on to have their own children and raise them in dysfunctional environments, and some great tips for people there, and from a website that I found very helpful. Tonight I found another interesting article that was posted on about.com called The Cycle of Child Abuse, and I've actually seen this before. May have actually read this one out a long time ago, probably did. I recognize it. And but it's good to call attention to it again because there is some good information on these websites, about.com, to the child abuse tabs, and there's some links, lots and lots of links that people can link, go and find more information about child abuse prevention and what they can do. Parents who may be struggling and maybe having a hard time and think, well, I don't know how to cope. And there is all kinds of information out there for people, especially because of the internet, available to families and to parents who are having a hard time coping and may have issues within the family that they just don't know how to deal with. And you don't have to hurt your children, right? There is a better way, and there's always a better way. So just look for that information where you can find it. There is tons and tons of it out there. I spent a couple hours actually researching on the web here tonight, just looking around at child abuse prevention information, and pretty well covered it on the internet, just on the search engines. And the search engines, will bring you to all kinds of great websites with lots of great information out there. All you have to do is just type in child abuse prevention and just scroll through, and you can see there is lots of good information out there. I've been doing this for 2 years now, and also on Dreamcatchers Talk Radio for a year steady, and we pretty well covered all of it. I've pretty much used all the different websites out there and all their information. It's like we're kind of, eventually going to run out of information. There isn't a whole lot of new information. What's out there is just what is out there. But what we do see out here is the headlines, and the headlines are always coming in. They're not stopping, right? It's just hard to get people interested in preventing child abuse, except for about one time a year when they do like a monthly child abuse awareness campaign, and down in the States and up in Canada, we do one day. Isn't that great? And it should be every day of the year, 365 days a year, campaigning against child abuse, right? But I guess we should be happy we have a month down in the States and one day up in Canada, right? But this particular article, I'm not really talking about too much information tonight here that is graphic, but I always post a graphic warning on my shows because I'm talking about abuse, and abuse is a very sensitive subject, and you have to be, aware of what you should be listening to, and you have to ultimately make that choice for yourself. And so listen to all of my shows and any of my shows at your own discretion. And anybody under the age of 18, I just ask that you have permission to listen to my shows, mainly because I'm talking about abuse and a lot of adult content, and I just think that children should be protected at all times. So you need to have a parent or a caregiver, somebody who can help you make a decision, have them listen to the show with you, and that way they can help you make a decision whether or not you should be listening, right, age appropriately. And so we'll get right into this, and I wanted to look at the cycle of child abuse, right? And this was written by a former About.com guide, Kimberly L. Keith, and she's written a lot of stuff here, and this one particular article is pretty good. I really liked it, and she went on to, she sort of sets up a scenario where between a parent and a child, what could happen, right? She says, I'm just going to read it word for word. She says, you see your child misbehaving and you tell him to stop. And he ignores you and you tell him again. You're getting frustrated. He says, okay, I will. Then 10 minutes later, the same thing is going on. You're really angry now. It feels like your authority as a parent means nothing. If other adults are around, then it's even worse. You feel ineffective and inadequate. So you yell, I told you to stop that right now. Get over here. You grab him by the arm when he comes to you, give him a shake and tell him to go to his room. You're going to get a whipping for not minding me. A few minutes later, you go into his room with a belt and spank his bottom with 3 good licks. Now fast forward about 10 years. He's 15 and you tell him to clean his room. He sighs, walks into his room and slams the door. 30 minutes later, you check and he hasn't done a thing in his room. In fact, he's on the phone with a friend. The TV is blaring and a bag of chips is spilled on the floor now. You've had it with his defiance of your requests, and you yell at him, "You are so lazy. I told you to clean up in here, and you deliberately defied me. You're going to get a whipping for not minding me." He's heard that before, and he's decided he's had enough. "Oh no, you're not going to touch me. I'm getting out of this place." He bolts for the door, and you grab him as he moves past you. He swings around and pushes you out of the way. You fall against the dresser and it hurts. You are livid. "Just wait until I get you," you scream after him. So the cycle of abuse follows a certain predictable pattern that begins when the child is young and gets progressively worse as the child becomes a teenager. And here are the steps you will see. And so she lists these off here. It's just an interesting look at what happens, in families, because everybody who's a parent probably has dealt with something like this, maybe handled it a little bit better, hopefully, right? But not all the time. Many times parents actually leave no alternatives except for to hurt their children because they've set it up that way. And it's kind of, I don't know, it's just really bad parenting. But the list of stuff that she says here, the steps that you will see is 1, the child misbehaves. 2, the parent notices the child's misbehavior and gives them instructions to correct it, him or her. 3, the child does not comply. They may ignore the instructions, argue, or even refuse to do what the parent says. 4, the parent feels angry. The parent feels that his authority or her authority is being threatened. The parent yells at the child, shakes the child, insults the child, or hits the child. And 5, the child feels angry, resentful, and worthless. And 6, the child's misbehavior becomes more ingrained and is now based on feelings of revenge or worthlessness. And number 7, the parent becomes more and more frustrated with the continued misbehavior, and the entire cycle escalates until someone intervenes or someone gets hurt badly. And that's just the reality of it. She says here, you can see the potential for this cycle to occur in any family. Also apparent is the need for parents to learn effective ways to discipline their children without yelling and spanking. So there are 3 primary intervention points in this cycle. So the first one, when giving instructions to the child. And the second one, after the child has failed to comply with the instructions. And the third one, with the child's feelings of worthlessness and bonding with the child's feelings of worthwhileness and bonding with the parent. So there's all kinds of links here and stuff that she's got. Just a short little article, but what I wanted to draw attention to is the fact that, parents so many times will do that, because it's not easy dealing with a child who's not listening and will not do what they're told and could even hurt themselves doing something that, and the parents trying to even just protect their children, but having to get to feel that they have to discipline because the child's not listening. There's a certain way to go about it, and there is really helpful information out there regarding the developmental stages of children and when it's appropriate and when it's not, and what kind of discipline works. Everybody's different. Every family is going to have different ways of raising their children, but I think it's just incorporating some coping skills, coping mechanisms, and also some tools for parents who are struggling and say, okay, well, how are we going to handle this when the time comes? Because you don't want to wait till it happens and then try to decide on that moment, how am I going to handle this? Because you might, at that point, you're just going to be basing your discipline on the way you feel. And so if you're really angry and you're really upset at the child because they're not listening or whatever they were doing has made you bad and angry, you're just going to discipline based on how you feel. It's not going to teach the child anything. And a lot of times I think, when children are young, people start to discipline, might over-discipline, and then as the child grows up, and their behaviors, if they don't change, and they're still causing issues with the parents or the caregivers, they escalate to even harsher punishments, and pretty soon the child doesn't care, and they're just like, look, it doesn't matter, you've already hurt me, so what are you going to do? And that never ever works. I've seen this so many times with people who, I grew up witnessing a lot of abuse in my own home, and that's what I always talk about on my shows, but really it's just because I'm a witness of all kinds of types of abuse. But I knew kids who grew up in homes too where, you could just tell that was a situation, because the parents would be literally punching their children and kicking their children around, and these children would have been about 13, 14 years old, and they would just be considered rebellious teens. But that's not how you treat a rebellious teen. You don't beat on your children. I don't care how old they are. You don't punch your children out. You don't bash them in the head. You don't do these things. But yet people do, right? And that's the sad thing. And so many people think it's just okay. Oh, it's fine. And it's no, it's crime. It's against the law, right? Thank God. Child abuse is against the law. There's just better ways to handle it. And I think that it's always the adults in the situation. It is always their fault. They're making the wrong choices. They obviously, if so many children, there are children out there who have behavioral issues, and maybe they have the greatest parents in the whole world, and the child still has behavioral issues. That's still up to the parent to do the right thing by the child. And if that means getting that child some help in whatever way it is, you just can't go around abusing your children just for any reason, right? I mean, it's just wrong. And there has to be something. There has to be something. I've heard, because of what I do, advocating and really public speaking, out here raising awareness about child abuse and stuff. I mean, I hear some stories that, you just sit here and just shake your head because you're like, well, what's a parent supposed to do in that case, Like if you have a child who's actually trying to hurt you or whatever, like how are you supposed to protect yourself? You know what I mean? I don't know. There's just got to be. There's no easy answers to this stuff, but there is when it comes to how you're going to bring your children up, and whether or not you're going to kill your children or not. That's an easy decision. It's just you should just decide that no, I will not hurt my child and I will not kill my child. Those are very simple decisions to make. But there's all kinds of people out there who will kill their children tonight. And they will make the wrong decision on behalf of those children. But even if it wasn't intentional, they will abuse them, so horrifically that they'll end up in the hospital due to the abuse-related injuries, and they'll die anyway. So we know that we'll lose so many children tonight and tomorrow and the next day and the next day. And it's just going to continue on because people are so ignorant. They just can't stop themselves. I don't know how anybody could kick a child. I really don't. Like, I can't even picture an adult person like myself being an adult doing that to a child. I just can't. Like, that child could be doing nothing that could warrant that. Like, to me, that's just so, like, I don't know. How could you even do that? That tells you how sick these people are, how incredibly sick they really are. Because I don't know how anybody could do that. You'd have to be inhuman to me. You have to be somebody who's inhuman, like a monster, I know, when my parents used to kick on me. You know what I mean? Like, my mom had no problem kicking me, slamming me into walls, and really hurting me physically as well as emotionally, verbally, psychologically, right? My dad had no problem doing that either. And my parents were very looked up on as far as, society went. Everybody liked them. They were great. And I just, it just bothers me because I think, how these people are very sick. Anybody that could do that to a child feel justified. There's something wrong with them, obviously. But so many people do hurt their children and think it's fine. It's like, oh, I'm the parent, and you're going to fill my boot, and it's like, oh, great, lovely. You just, whoa, we're all so honored to be around you. You know what I mean? There's no honor in that. There's no respect in that. There's no, human, really, as far as I'm considered, human qualities in that. It's barbaric, and it's completely wrong, and it's completely twisted, and it's completely unnecessary, And it's just a lot of times that parents, for whatever reason, they feel that they have the right to do these things because they're the parent, and oh, the child's not listening, and oh, the child's doing this, or that my kid's doing that, and so I'm just going to have to get firm, and I'm going to have to hurt my child. It's like, and they will actually say that they thought that was okay. If you see a lot of the court proceedings and whatnot that go on, there's so many people out here who hurt their children, and they think it's fine. You know what I mean? And it's like, no, you've killed your child. What do you think about that now? Well, it just had to happen because they stole a muffin off the stove, or, there's just a whole lot of sick, really sick people out here. And there's a whole better way of dealing with things than hurting your children and killing your children, right? And on this page, there's a lot of links and stuff, and you can check them out. There's links to National Clearinghouse on Child Abuse and Neglect information, link between corporal punishment and delinquency, severe parental punishment and aggression, the Project No Spank, National Committee to Prevent Child Abuse and stuff like that. But this is just it. There's so many parenting styles that actually really don't work. And it's a good idea, if you're having problems and you're a parent, you're struggling, and you're thinking, man, I just don't know how I'm going to cope because what I've been using, what I've been working with to try to discipline my child or my children is not working. Then it's time to get some help with it. You know what I mean? Because you don't want to hurt your child, you don't want to hurt your children, and there's better ways to handle things. This next link is also from about.com, childparenting.about.com, and this was also from Kimberly O'Keefe, and she used to write, she was one of the former about.com guides, and she wrote, Abusive parenting practices are learned early in life, but they can be changed. And she says, do you recognize any of these attitudes in your parenting style? For one, expecting your child to do things that are beyond their developmental capability. Number two, lack of empathy for your child's feelings and needs. Ignore your child to avoid spoiling your child. Number three, emphasizing physical punishment to maintain parental authority and control your child's behavior. And number four, looking to your child to meet your own needs for happiness. And number five, discouraging your child's attempts at independence and personal power. So they said parents who physically or emotionally abuse their children are most often acting upon beliefs and experiences from their own childhood. And most would change the atmosphere and life of their own family if they only knew how. So if you recognize yourself in the features of abusing parents above, you can take steps to break from the cycle of child abuse to a healthier parenting style and happier family life. Parenting strategies to break the cycle of child abuse. She writes here, educate yourself about normal child development to have more realistic expectations for your child. And recognize that child development goes in spurts. It takes time for a child to learn new behaviors and practice them consistently. So try to identify the feelings that your child is expressing through their words and actions. Remain calm when your child's upset, and treat your child as you would your best friend, with respect and love. So discontinue physical punishment, replace it with effective behavior management strategies. So you know the truth of abuse physical punishment. It harms your child's healthy development and destroys the parent-child relationship. So discipline with dignity, on the other hand, teaches your child to respect authority and to develop self-control. See, that's awesome. I wish everybody knew how to do that, but obviously there's just so many people who really don't, and that's why there's so many screwed up people on this planet. Strengthen your adult relationships. Seek confidential counseling to begin to change your patterns of intimacy with other adults, and the outcome will be greater satisfaction in your personal life and improved relationships with your kids. And encourage your child's attempts at independence, right? Listen to their opinions, take their feelings into account when making decisions. Give your child opportunity to make choices throughout childhood. In doing so, you can help your child. You help them develop a sense of self and the basis for a healthy personality, and also coping skills. You know, like if a parent if a parent is coping, if two parents are coping, whoever these people are in this situation, the parents or guardians or whoever are coping, the child will learn from that. They'll learn how to cope too. But when a parent, or guardian or caregiver, whoever's raising that child or looking after that child, just can't cope with anything, and the child's, making a mess or not listening and doing things that goes, is totally getting on the nerves of the parent or the caregiver, and they keep, day after day, week after week, month after month, telling the child, not to do these things, and the child just continues on. They start to lose it. And before you know it, they're screaming at the child or hurting the child, throwing things at the child, because just to get their way, basically throwing a temper tantrum and hurting the child. Well, who is the adult in the situation? Like, who needs to be in charge and in control? Well, it needs to be the adult, right? And who needs to make the better choices? The adult, right? And so, there's better ways to handle things than screaming and ranting and raving at your children, calling them names, criticizing them, putting them down, making them feel bad and stupid, kicking their ass, whatever you're doing. There's better ways to handle it, right? But there's still some really bad belief systems going around that people think that it's okay just to, I got to put my child in line, so I'm going to have to punch him in the face, and I'm going to have to drag out the belt and beat the crap out of him, and I'm going to have to curse obscenities at him to make him feel really bad and low and stupid, while I'm doing all this, and that way I can really hurt him. And then when I've broken the child, I'll be fine. Well, sure. You'll be fine, but your child will not be. And then hopefully you'll be brought up on charges and arrested and do time, heavy-duty, serious time for abusing your child, right? Back in the old days, you could get away with this stuff. Nowadays, you can't, because the laws say that it's against the law. I'm all for it. I'm pro-law, you betcha. And, we need more people willing to stand up on behalf of children's and child rights, on children's rights and child rights to protect children. We need more people willing to stand up and say, you know what, this is wrong. It's got to stop. And we need more people within families who are willing to who have the balls and the guts to stand up against abusers. It's not easy. But I used to stand up for my mother, even though she was my main abuser. But I didn't like to see what was happening to her, so I used to stand up to her against my dad. And I mean, I took some beatings for it. I was like 9 years old. What do you want me to do? But I was still willing to always stand up for what was right, and I've always been like that, and I always will be like that. It just must be my nature. But too many people aren't, and they don't care. My mother wasn't. She didn't care if my dad abused me. She didn't care that she abused me, and she didn't care that my brother raped and sodomized me. She just didn't care. And she didn't stand up for anybody, right? She didn't stand up for herself, and she didn't stand up for anybody. And so, I see the difference between people, you know what I mean? And there will always be people that just will allow these things to continue on and actually agree with the abuser. And it's incredibly wrong, and it needs to stop. The cycle of violence needs to stop. The cycle of abuse needs to stop. This is absolutely ridiculous. Because what really bothers me is that the whole thing is so simple. It's just so simple. If everybody would stop hurting each other, this wouldn't be happening. If people would stop abusing their children, we could all go on to do something else, And if people would stop abusing each other, we could all go on and do something else. Oh, but no, we have to have, mom and dad kicking or killing their children, or mom and dad killing each other, or grandma and grandpa sexually using the children. Hey, believe it or not, they do. Grandparents have been known to sexually use children. They sure do. This is all so incredibly wrong. And why is it still happening? Why? Because people are sick. That's why. But it's just so simple, It's just it drives me literally bonkers because it's so simple. And yet we still will always have somebody sick enough in the head to do these things to their family, to other people's children, because they think it's okay. See, I don't know what's the answer to this. You know what I mean? I really don't. Like, what's the answer to this? What kind of punishment is enough punishment for people? You know what I mean? For people out here who abuse children and who systematically hurt a child to the point where it's child abuse. It's not discipline. And then they get a couple years sometimes, they walk away, and they're able to abuse more children, have more children, kill more children. Like, it's just so incredibly wrong. Like, why should they be allowed to do that? And I think that, I think stiffer punishments would definitely help. If a parent knew that, if a parent knew that they got caught and they were found 100% guilty of abusing a child, that they were going to have to go live on an island somewhere for the rest of their life and they were never coming off, ever, I think they would change their tune. I really do. And then we'd have kind of like what happened with Sweden, you know what I mean? Which it just doesn't work, right? Where it's like, okay, you can't even touch a child because it's child abuse. I mean, it's just that it should, moralistically, and it should be part of the human values that you would value your children, that society would value their children and value children. See, that's the problem. People don't value children. There's no value on children. Children mean nothing except for to a few good parents who actually do love and care for their children. Otherwise, children have zero value in today's world. It's perfect. People don't care if people do these horrible things to children. There's only a handful of us out here, and I know probably most of them. I mean, this is just so sick and wrong, and it needs to change, right? And really the only way we're going to be able to change it is really through our own actions, through our own deeds, watching out for children around us, looking out for kids in our own world, in our own life, making sure we're not hurting our own children if you have children, and also getting involved locally. I think that's a big one. You can get involved nationally all you want, but nationally isn't going to do it because the government doesn't care about child abuse. The government doesn't care about children, period. And that's a fact. Look and see how many programs are actually run by the government that work, that are actually working. Zero. Hey, and I'm not against the government. I'm not anti-government. I'm all pro-government. But the thing is I wish that they would care a little bit more about children and do something about this. And really start putting money into it. I mean, right now they're pumping $105 billion into it in the United States alone, just because of child abuse. Not to stop it. I just talked about that on Monday night because that's the facts. That's what the stats are, and that's a drag. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, come on, spend another $700 billion and let's stop this stupid mess. Let's get enough programs out there. Let's get people. If you actually start paying people, you'd have more people doing the work. You know what I mean? It's just that most people can't volunteer. How many people can actually volunteer to do this stuff? Not very many, because we all have to make a living so we can put food on the table for our own kids. I don't have kids, but I'm just talking for everybody here. And so they need to stop just assuming that everybody's just going to volunteer to do this stuff and start paying people real wages. Because you know how many more people would get involved, and there would be so much more help for people out here. There would be so many more people getting so many more home visits to make sure that they're not abusing their children after they've already been involved with CPS and DHS and all that. You know, there'd be so many people that would have, you know, groups set up for parents who are struggling, who have been caught, you know, busted for abusing their children, but you know, they still get to keep the children. You know, why? Because where else are you going to put them? Does it make any sense to ship them all off to foster care? No, because foster care is not the answer. But the issue is if a child's going to be murdered, you have to remove the child from the home. So a lot of these kids out here have been removed because of that. Some are removed, I guess, in error. I don't know the percentages on that, but I know that it's got to be a fact because some they don't even remove and they end up getting killed. So we all know that the system doesn't work, you know. But I would say, like, get involved locally within your local areas to help your own local people out. You know what I mean? In whatever way you can, because you'll find that there's not that much going on. There's really not. I mean, you look around in each city and each town and each area and find out how many child abuse counsels there are. There's hardly none. And the ones that are there, what are they able to do? Not much. You know, and it's kind of like every city and every town needs to have a group of people that become like a think tank on how they're going to get more awareness out within their own city and without their own. Because this is what I'm doing right now. I'm just working on what I'm going to do in my city, you know, to change this. And it's going to be huge because it's a big job trying to get people to pay attention to this stuff. Because most people really don't care. They really don't. And the majority of people, most people who would be listening to my show obviously do care, or they wouldn't be listening. But the rest of the world just doesn't. And we have to still continue to make noise. That's what I said. It's definitely not a popularity contest. You know what I mean? Like, if you're going to get involved in child abuse prevention, you may as well kiss all your friends goodbye, right? Because you won't have very many. Because they certainly don't want to hear about what you guys say. Nobody wants to hear about it, you know? And yet I had to live it. I had to live with my mom's fist in my face, bloody nose, fat lip, you know, just beaten to a pulp on a regular basis with whatever she could get. You know, implements or her hands or her fists or whatever, kicked around, thrown into walls, strangled and choked, told off, cursed out, screamed at, cussed at. I was a little child. I was like 6, 7, 8. I was even 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years old, 9 years old, 10 years old, 11 years old, 12 years old, 13 years old, 14, 15, 16 years old, 17 years old. And she was still kicking my ass. And you know, and the issue is she finally did have to stop because she got too old and I got too old. You know what I mean? But the thing is she was still trying at the age of 17 to slap me around. I'm like, you know, well, she was slapping my 21-year-old sister around, so there you go. But you know, this is so sick, right? That people think this is okay. It's really not. And so do what you can in your own areas, I would say, and get involved nationally if you want to. You know. National groups aren't doing much. They just sit there. I'm serious. I don't even know what they do because you can't even tell what they do on their websites. I mean, I've been on all of them, and it's like they're just kind of there. I don't know what they're doing with the funding, but they don't really talk about it. And you know, get involved grassroots. You know, with these organizations that don't have funding and that are doing something. Find groups that are doing stuff and then get involved because there are groups that are doing stuff. RAIN is one. There's some out there, little warriors up here. It's who I wish that I could get involved with them actually because they are doing something. There are groups out there who are doing stuff and who are just kind of small grassroots. Get involved with those guys, with the groups that are doing stuff. Get involved and use your voice. Use the power behind your votes. Use the power behind your voice and start speaking up for what is right, speaking out against what is wrong. And we got to start thinking about how we're going to save these children's lives, right? Thanks for being here. I think I'm catching a bit of a cold, but anyway, I appreciate everybody for tuning in. I'll be back on tomorrow morning, one child abuse survivor to another, and I'll be fine. But I think I'm catching a bit of a cold here tonight. But I'll be on tomorrow morning, 6 o'clock in the morning, same time, same place. And you guys have a great night. You know, look out for the kids in your own life, you know, and do not abuse them. Don't be mean to your children. Treat them right. They deserve it. You treat them right, they'll treat you right, you know. And have a great night, everybody. Take good care of yourselves. Talk to you soon.